Hey friends, Al Iverson here. It's time for another of your email authentication and deliverability questions answered. Today, the question I'm going to answer is this. What subdomain should I choose for my marketing emails? Now, you might think this has nothing to do with email authentication or DMARC, but it's a question that a client actually asked me just about a week ago. And I thought it would be a good thing to share with you all because it's not the first time I've had this question, and I'm sure it's not the last time I'll ever hear it. So let's start there. What subdomain should you choose? Now, in case you're not aware, it's very common for IT administrators to configure a specific subdomain for sends from some specific email platform. Sometimes the platform encourages this. Maybe there is some technical need or complexity that requires, or at least strongly suggests, a subdomain. Sometimes it's not necessary because of some technical reason, but it still might make sense, might be useful to use a subdomain for email sends from that platform to be able to better identify and audit them over time. And I'd like to kick it off by warning everyone to keep away from using a lookalike domain. Here are examples of actual subdomains. We got e.example.com, m.example, email.example, even nerds or potato.example.com. These are all subdomains under example.com. Everything rolls up to the domain example.com. We know that example.com, assuming all of the authentication and DNS bits are correct, that example.com is responsible for everything underneath that, all of the subdomains, all of the hosts, all of the activity, everything found in DNS for all of those. And now look at these other ones. These are lookalike or cousin domains. Example-email.com, examplemail.com, marketingexample.com, example1.com, or even example.net. Now, these are close but not quite domains. And I want to make it clear that this is something you should avoid. If you use them, you train recipients to trust domains that are almost but not quite on brand. And guess what? Bad actors love that. They can spin up convincing lookalike domains in minutes. And if you condition your customers to accept mail that comes from almost your domain, you're lowering the bar for phishing. So please don't do that. I'll talk more about which subdomain to pick in just a second, but let's talk a bit more first about the why of subdomains. Why not just use the top level domain for my email sends from every platform I send from? Well, there are a few reasons you might want to avoid that. First, clarity. If you use e.example.com strictly for your marketing platform sends, you'll always know what that domain, what that subdomain is being used for. It makes logging cleaner. It might make troubleshooting cleaner too. It makes auditing and tracking easier, and it lets you easily know which email is coming from where. Next, technical necessity. When I worked for a particular email marketing platform, their custom domain configuration had more than a dozen DNS sub entries that needed to be implemented underneath the visible from domain or subdomain. So if you already use your top level of your domain for other stuff, one or more of these newly required DNS entries for the new platform are likely to conflict with the bits of DNS you already have in place if you're starting from that top level of your email domain. Moving them to a subdomain provides you with a clear and empty namespace into which to configure all of the necessary DNS bits. And finally, reputation segmentation. A subdomain gives you some breathing room between your bulk mail and your corporate mail at the top level domain as far as domain reputation goes. Now, if something goes wrong in your marketing program, that gives you a little bit of buffer between that and employee mail or executive communications. But keep in mind that has limits. Spam filters are getting smarter all the time. They absolutely look at subdomain reputation, and there is some component of separate reputation when it comes to different subdomains. But they also understand organizational domains, and they're getting smarter about rolling up data to that organizational domain level. So if you go crazy with spam on a subdomain, you can be assured that eventually you will hurt the reputation of the domain, the top level domain overall. So a subdomain effectively gives you a bit of insulation, but it's not immutable and it's not long lasting immunity. So choose wisely and be sure, no matter what you set up, to send responsibly. Now back to naming. My suggestion there is don't lock yourself into a specific mail type by choice of name. Avoid names like marketing.example.com or sales.example.com or promo.example.com. Because what happens when marketing also sends lifecycle messages or product updates or customer education, you're sort of boxing yourself in with emails that people will assume that they're a certain type of message when they're not. And assumptions have another angle there too. You don't want to use something that looks obviously spammy. Now, I shouldn't have to say this, but you don't want to use spam.example.com or blast.example.com. You want to avoid naming it something that'll make recipients immediately assume that you're sending unwanted marketing messages based on the from address alone. So to me, that means keep it simple and flexible, maybe even neutral. m.example.com or e.example.com or even MSG for message.example.com. Aiming to keep it short is not a bad idea, as sometimes email address display real estate can be limited, especially on mobile. At Valumail, we even use get.valumail.com for some of our own use cases. It looks clean, it's on brand, and it's not overly explicit about the type of mail that's being sent. It's not quite punny, but it is kind of a fun way to help reinforce our brand in the from address. So if you're setting this up on a new email marketing platform, don't forget about IP and domain warming as well. I'm not going to go deep into that here, but you absolutely do need a controlled ramp up or warming plan. I'll include a link to Jennifer Nespola Lance's excellent guide to IP warming in the video description. Be sure to check that out. And finally, here's a side note, especially if you're a Valumail customer, check your DMARC records carefully. When you spin up a new subdomain, some email marketing platforms will automatically create a subdomain level DMARC record. And I've seen at least one platform that adds P equals reject without a reporting address to that subdomain for that new DNS when it's set up. You don't want that. That'll conflict with what you're doing with DMARC already. So if you see a conflicting DMARC record on that subdomain, be sure to talk to your platform about having it removed so that your organizational top level domain DMARC policy can apply. You really want to take care of that because if some of these defaults, they don't have a RUA or aggregate reporting address, you won't get visibility into those sends, that traffic in your DMARC platform inside of our Valumail platform. Again, if you spot a subdomain level DMARC record that conflicts with your intended overall organizational policy, make sure to ask the sending platform to remove it. And another aside, you might also want to be sure to register that new subdomain with Google Postmaster Tools, the Gmail reputation dashboard that gives you great feedback about your complaint rate, sending reputation, and so forth. And that's another thing that's a little bit out of scope for here, but Google that. You can find more about Google Postmaster Tools and why that's so important to sending email properly. So to recap, use a real subdomain of your primary domain, avoid lookalike domains, keep the name neutral and flexible, warm it up properly, double check your DMARC setup, and don't forget about Google Postmaster Tools. And so that is it for today. I hope you found this interesting. Feel free to email me your feedback. My email address is al.iverson@valumail.com. And don't forget to visit our website at valumail.com when you're ready to embark upon your DMARC journey.